Order the Ashburnham Board of Selectmen meeting, Monday, December 14th, 2020. It's 6:30 PM. Can I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
I think Rosen.
No second?
I'll second that. Rosemary Meister.
Okay. All in favor? Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meister, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes.
Now we go to citizen comments. Is there anybody that would like to address the board on anything not on the agenda tonight? All right, seeing nothing, we will move right on to the town administrator's update.
Sure. So thank you. Like everyone else, pretty much in the state, we've noticed the uptick in cases of COVID. More last week than the last couple of days, but just to be aware of that, so be careful. Also, we noticed the advertisement for the building commissioner when we put the job out there was still a part-time position. Things have changed with Rick Travers kind of going forward, and he's gonna end his time here. So we've put the job out as a full-time position. We had people looking for a full-time position, but we posted on the town's website to officially put it out there as a full-time position. So I'm looking to fill that, and that will be filled once we find a suitable candidate. So one other thing that was brought to my attention last Wednesday, Julie, the town accountant, came in and was going through our audit, and the outside auditors noticed there was a $90,000 entry that wasn't made to stabilization. So it doesn't affect anything expense-wise or anything, but it does affect our stabilization account, and it affects our free cash number. So because it was a town vote in May 7th of 2019 that was never posted to the GL accounts. So when I did my adjustments in June of 2020, that 90,000 therefore was doubled because the entry was never made. So what it does, it reduces the free cash that we had certified by the state and increases our stabilization account $90,000. We'll have more discussion on that as we do the capital and advisory committee meetings along with the Board of Selectmen as we move forward to the special town meeting to allocate those free cash numbers. So there'll be a lot more, that'll come up a couple more times as we go forward towards a special town meeting. And that's all I have for the town administrator updates.
Do you have to go back to get recertified with the state on free cash?
We do not. It'll just be my understanding is we don't have to get recertified. It's just that 90,000 of that money has now been appropriated to stabilization.
Okay. All right, now we go on to pending grant update. We'll start with the complete street plan, the beta final plan. So is this the one, Brian, where you were asking for a shared screen?
Yes, Mary, can you share your screen?
I don't have, I don't think I can. Sorry.
All right. Yeah. I got three screens up. Let me see. Why don't you open mine up to share it? I'll see if I can get the right screen to show up.
Should be open.
Yeah, I'm trying it right now. I got a lot of them on there. All right. I got three screens. Can you see the map?
Yes.
Look, baby, you see the right one? Because I don't know what screen you're looking at, so. Okay. All right. So Steve, you want to talk about this or?
Well, I think I'll let Beta speak to it.
Okay, perfect.
Bill McGrath should be on.
Oh,
Yep.
Bill, go ahead.
All right. So the plans that are up on the screen are our final design plans, sort of advanced from the plans that we had talked about at a couple of previous meetings. The project is essentially the same that we've been talking about, from about Lawrence Street up to Cushing Street. Sidewalks on both sides. We've made a few adjustments based on what we've talked about at previous meetings. Brian, I don't know if maybe you can go to sheet 4. That's the first plan sheet. Yeah. So again, a couple of things that we've added. The 3 crosswalks going across Main Street are now decorative imprint crosswalks, so they can have the appearance of red brick without actually being brick. They're a thermoplastic inlay over stamped asphalt. We've had pretty good success with these on other projects. They're pretty durable. They're also visible. So I know we had talked about that at a previous meeting. So I think that's something that will be a benefit to the project. We've also added pedestrian warning signs at each one of the crosswalks across Main Street. We've added new no parking signs along Main Street. At the Father Lacey Center, I know we've talked about this a bit. We've shortened the driveway up a little bit by about 11 or 12 feet. And it will be concrete sidewalk across the driveway. So it will essentially be a continuous sidewalk, but we can't really tighten it up any more than that without really impacting the operation of the parking lot. And I think that's really the changes on this sheet. No, Brian, if you want to go to the next sheet, sheet 5.
I have a question on this sheet, by the way.
Sorry.
So, you know, when you're in front of Father Lacey's Hall
Yep.
and you see these cars, and there's actually a car, and I know it's just an overlay, but these cars park what essentially would be on the sidewalk. Does St. Denis know that they're going to have to eliminate probably one parking space there to accommodate the sidewalk, or will people be parking on the sidewalk?
No, they won't be able to park on the sidewalk, and so that space is actually extending into the town's right of way there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Right. And again, so I think the first thing sort of on the left-hand side of the sheet is the St. Denis, the main parking lot, which we've tightened up a bit and took the wide entrance and made it 2 smaller entrances or access points. And we've added curb at the back of the sidewalk. I think we had talked about that to define the sidewalk and prevent people from trying to drive over it. We've done the same thing down at the parking lot for the mini mart by Pleasant Street. We've added some curb at the back of sidewalk there as well. And also the crosswalk at Pleasant Street. We've worked on that a little bit. So the crosswalk going across Pleasant Street isn't quite as skewed as it had been previously. It's still a shared apex ramp on the corner. We really can't do much about that because of utilities, fire hydrants, and so, but I think we've been able to rework the curb line a little bit, make that work better. And I think the last thing that we've talked about is some landscaping on the grass strip in front of number 78 and also in front of number 82. Like we've talked about in the past, trees really don't work there because of the overhead utility wires and also because of the grade between the curb and the sidewalk. We looked at possibly some bushes, but really didn't feel that they were appropriate because they're so close to the road. There's going to be a lot of sand and salt there. They also require quite a bit of maintenance to make sure they stay trimmed back. So one of the things we did talk about with our LA group was maybe some ornamental type grasses rather than just a standard grass mix. They grow a little bit higher. They have a little bit of color, some of the species. They do require a bit more maintenance than just cutting a standard grass mix. It's not something you really want to mow down. So if you went with something like that, there would be some more maintenance for DPW to undertake. And then just before I forget, the other thing on this sheet is we did extend the sidewalk and the project down in front of Family Dental to define that parking
Is that
area.
a quick question?
Yep. Sorry.
Bill, I had a quick question on, you were just talking, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Yep.
Bill?
Yep, I can
Okay.
hear you.
You know where is, and this is just to jog my memory, the ornamental grasses would be going into where there's an existing ditch, right? Is that like the area where there's a ditch in where the grassy strip is? It's just a pile of rock and water runs off down in there. Is that where that is?
Yeah, I think we're talking about the same area. So it'd be just the two properties just south of Chapel Street, number 82 and number 78.
Right, because that, if my record, I mean, I usually walk down there, but I'm really not paying attention. There's one section where it essentially is a ditch. There's no grass, no soil, there's some rock in there. And during rainstorms, the water currently fills in and runs down in that. It's almost like a swale, an open swale.
Yeah, and we'll have vertical curbing there to channelize the water and keep it in the road. So that'll help keep the erosion from occurring in that section as well. But like I say, I think it's something to consider, but there is more maintenance that's involved with that. Like I say, it's not as simple as going out and mowing the grass. So.
And then at the corner of Pleasant, at that, where we have the new crosswalk that's imprinted.
Yep.
Just so I know, that corner there, right? That's handicap accessible, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we just because of, like I say, utilities and geometry, we're not able to have separate curb ramps, one for each ramp, which is preferable, but not always required if there's constraints to that. So what we've done is widen the landing area for that ramp so it accommodates both of the crosswalks.
So I know I'm going to be a pain in the neck here because I'm bringing up trees again. But I just attended an MVP presentation in the city of Gardner, which also included a tree inventory and a tree report. And one of the things that they mentioned was that Complete Streets and the Municipal Vulnerability Program were recommending trees to shade the sidewalks and roads, reducing energy, acting as wind barriers, and helping with stormwater management. Also increasing the value of properties and promoting economic development. Is there a way that we could put trees somewhere up by where we have large strips of pavement, like at St. Dennis's parking lot, or in front of the Village Pizza Mini Mart area, so that it's a very visible break. They'll see a tree there now, right?
Well,
Is that something that's doable or no?
well, I think some of the constraints we've talked about before, putting the trees in the sidewalk in a tree well, is not the most desirable way to do it. The trees tend to either not have great service life. If they're not maintained well, they do tend to heave the sidewalk. You also have some accessibility issues, where you only have 6 feet of sidewalk. And if you need 3 to 4 feet for accessibility. So you're kind of constraining the area for the tree. Trying to put them behind the sidewalk. Now, again, you're into private property and in doing that. So it would have to be something that, the owner would partially have to help undertake.
So what's the distance from the center line to just past the sidewalk?
From the center line of the road? Is that from the center line of the road you're talking about? Yep. Can folks still hear me?
Can hear you.
Yes, the center line of the road to the
So from the
because what that is, if I'm unfortunately not able to hear Bill.
Yeah.
So McGrath.
No, unfortunately, I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear you, Bill.
I don't, can everyone else hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine. Rosemary, you're breaking up, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm having some trouble hearing you. But maybe I can just, I think I know.
Yeah, I know.
I think I know what you're asking, so let me just maybe try to walk through it. So in the section down by Lawrence Street, across where the existing sidewalk is, the total width is.
Because I don't know why I am.
Yep.
I'm going to put the question in.
She's asking what the distance is between the center line and just inside the sidewalk.
So it's about 15 feet.
He said the city attorney was told by their consultant that they could access up to 20 feet from the center line as a public way.
Not sure I understand what they mean by that. I mean, you have an established right-of-way line for the street, a public right-of-way. Okay, so they may be talking about public shade trees, which by definition, trees planted within 20 feet may be considered public shade trees. But I believe the town would still have to get some type of easement or permission from the owner to do that. But if a tree was planted within 20 feet of the right of way, it could be considered a public shade tree.
Yep, she just commented that public shade tree was brought up at that meeting she was at.
Yep.
So, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So they said that within 20 feet of the center line of the road, the city of Gardner, and I don't know if this is true in Ashburnham, could plant a tree on private property within that 20 feet from the center road. They would have to pay for the tree, the city of Gardner.
Yeah. But they felt that they could do that without permission of the property owner?
Oh, no, they would ask permission, but in their instance, the vast majority of them were more than welcome to get a free tree.
Yeah, so I won't disagree with that. Like I say, within 20 feet, it would be considered a public shade tree, which would offer it protection in the future from being removed. And if you had the permission of the property owner, then yes, you could probably do that.
Thank you.
Bill, do you have any questions for him?
Actually, I do. Bill, I need you to go back to the area in front of Father Lacey Hall, if you could. So I'm confused as to what exactly that is. So, I mean, we see the space where the two handicap spots are in the front. So is that a sidewalk across there with curbing, or because it goes the whole expanse? So are we completely eliminating access to parking there, or what exactly is that?
No, that's probably a little confusing because there's some shading there that probably shouldn't be there, but it's basically a concrete driveway apron. So it's the driveway, but it's concrete. So it has the same appearance as the sidewalk, but we're not eliminating any of the access there.
So I thought we had talked about narrowing that so that they couldn't use the two handicap spots in the front because we didn't want them backing out onto Main Street.
Well, I think that had come up in a discussion, but at least from our perspective at this point, we didn't feel that we could eliminate parking that they had on their property and access to that parking, particularly handicapped accessible spaces.
Okay.
We were able to narrow the opening, like I said, by 10 or 11 feet. But if you do any more than that, then yes, you're going to eliminate access to the parking that they have there now.
Okay. The second question has to do with Ashburnham Municipal Light and Power. So have you had any conversations with any of those folks?
We have not, as Beta, no, we have not.
All right, so I reached out to the chairman of the Municipal Light Plant Committee or Commission, whatever they are, a couple of weeks ago, and I'd sent them over the draft version of this. And what I was trying to get from them was on what I'll call the north side of the street there from Lawrence up through, we were trying to get them to bury the power lines. And they didn't know if they were going to be able to do that or not. Obviously, it's a cost issue. I explained to them that we didn't have any funds in this project to do that, but they were going to look into it. And my fallback position with them was, because we also want to expand the decorative lights that are downtown. But my fallback position was, if they couldn't bury the cables, if on the south side, that we could put some decorative lights in there to extend those up through. They thought that was doable. So I have no idea what kind of impact that has on the project you've got out here, you know, the work and things like that. But I would really like us to try to do that if we can. I mean, this is like a one-shot deal. Once we put these sidewalks in and do everything, we're certainly not going to go back and dig them up to add lights or to bury power or things like that. So one of the other things they threw out there was, again, on the north side, if they couldn't see their way clear to get all the cables buried now, they talked about the prospects of running the conduit underneath the sidewalk so they could do it at a later date. Is that something that would be doable?
Yes, it's doable. Certainly the project can absorb any of that cost, within the grant that the town has for complete streets. So the cost of that would have to be borne some other way.
No, they're aware of that. I made that abundantly clear that there's no money in this project for these types of activities. It was, again, we'd have to figure that piece out.
So yes, certainly conduits could be put under the sidewalk. Depending on when we knew what size and how many conduits, it may delay advertising the project until we have that information. But to the best of my knowledge, there's no other underground utilities in the area that would interfere with that. So yes, it's certainly physically possible to do that.
So without delaying your projected timeline for going out to bid, when would you need to know that information by? Friday?
Yeah, by the end of the meeting would be good. No,
Yeah.
I think because it would add a little bit of work on our end to the plans, and we want to be ready first thing in the spring with a contractor. So I would say certainly the latest would be mid-January, so that we could incorporate it, be ready to go out to bid in February, and have a contractor on board and ready to go by the beginning of April.
Okay, well, I'll relay that information to them, and so they'll know exactly what we're looking at there. And who knows, maybe it's not doable, but I'd like to think that we could at least get the decorative lights up on the other side of the street to accommodate that. So one other thing I just wanted to throw out there has nothing to do with this project, but I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that Bill was very instrumental in providing me with useful, accurate information as related to the Share Street winter edition that grant that we recently applied for. So again, thank you publicly for giving us great information and a quick turnaround.
I have one more question, Bill.
Before you ask the question, if the Community Access TV is listening, somebody sent me a message and says there's no audio from this meeting being broadcast on Channel 9. Okay, Rosemary, I'm all set.
Yeah, so Bill, just one more question. It's my understanding that Complete Streets wants all backing out onto a sidewalk eliminated. So in front of Father Lacey Hall, you're backing out with those 2 parking spaces. Is that correct?
I believe those handicap spaces probably would have to back out. Yeah.
Why could they not move the handicap spaces to the side of the building and eliminate backing out? Has anyone asked them?
I have not asked them that question. I don't know if they've been asked at all. And again, I think we've discussed this. Yes, certainly the preference is not to have traffic backing out onto the street in any case. But again,
My other concern, Bill, would be because it's like a driveway, when people are picking, particularly parents picking kids up from CCD, they're going to pull right in there on top of the sidewalk off the road. If there was a curb there, they might not do that. They just park in the street, but still that just makes it a whole lot easier for them to roll right up there.
Yeah, no question. Again, it's very difficult to eliminate a property owner's access to their property. You know, they do have the spaces in front of the Father Lacey Center. There's also the driveway that has the angled spaces that goes down to the garage on the adjacent house that they own as well, so.
But we're putting in sidewalks now that were not existing.
Yep.
Okay, so that changes the game plan, right?
It does to a certain extent, again, to eliminate particularly the two handicap spaces in front of the building.
But we're
maybe-
not eliminating handicap. There's certainly, they can do handicap all along the side of the building.
They can, and again, I'm not, I'm not defending them or, the ramp to access their building is, if you're facing the building, is on the right side, so it's immediately adjacent to where their accessible spaces are, which again is in keeping and consistent with what ADA recommends, that the spaces be proximate to where the access is. So, and again, I'm not trying to argue one way or the other necessarily. I do think there's some issues that would have to be overcome to have them move those spaces. And I'm not sure where that begins, if it begins with the select board or how it begins. I'm not sure that it's something that we as a consultant can initiate without something on the town's end, so. But
Yeah,
I do
any
think there's some issues with
property
trying
owners. We've done no outreach to the property owners. So St. Dennis has not, we haven't talked to them about the fact that they have to reconfigure their entire parking lot.
with in front of the Father Lacey Center.
Well, even down the street, we're talking about them reconfiguring it.
Well, we had made suggestions about that. It certainly works without them reconfiguring the larger lot. So I think the Father Lacey Center would be the more problematic spot to try to reconfigure.
Well, it's worth a conversation. That's just my opinion, but you know, unless we reach out, we'll never know. And like Bill said, this is a one-shot deal for us.
Again, I'm happy to take part in that conversation. I'm not sure if we can initiate that conversation.
I think we lost her again.
No, I didn't say anything. Did you hear me?
Okay.
I didn't respond. All I'm saying is if you don't ask, you're never going to find out whether or not you can do it. They might be amenable to it.
Yeah, again, like I say, we're happy to take part in the conversation. I'm not sure we can initiate it.
Right. Well, I don't know either. I'm not a member of St. Dennis. I don't know anybody there. So it's not a conversation that I know how to bring up either, Bill.
I may know somebody that's on the church council. I'll check with them.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any more questions at the moment on this particular topic? Guess not. So shall we move on now to the MVP update?
Sure. Sure. Hi, my name is Lance Hill. I'm with PAR Corporation. I also have with me here Alan Orsi, also with PAR Corporation. Do you have the ability to allow me to share my screen? I put together a little informational presentation about what the MVP program is. I'd be
Yeah,
happy to walk
you
through
should
that.
be able to share it, Lance.
What's that? I'm sorry?
You should be able to. Permission is granted.
Okay, great. All right, bear with me here for a second while I share my screen. Try that again. All right, is that showing up okay for everyone?
Yes.
All right, great. Again, my name is Lance Hill. I'm a managing engineer with PAR Corporation. We're working with the town on the municipal vulnerability preparedness program. And I'm not sure if everybody knows all about the program itself, so I was going to take a couple of minutes just to kind of walk through there if that's okay with everyone. So what is the vulnerability program? It's a partnership that the state has recently undertaken over the last couple of years, whereas they encourage the community to become engaged, to identify vulnerabilities in the community that can be affected by climate change and resiliency. They ask the community to complete an assessment of those vulnerabilities and then develop and prioritize a list and then to take action on those. That's a lot of talk, but okay, what really is it? Well, it's a community-led process and it reinforces town partnerships. Oftentimes, I was a former public works director myself, and I understand that, oftentimes each department is kind of in its own silo and, we're not always talking with each other. This helps foster those relationships and reinforce them. It also helps for the community then to prepare this plan and to inform statewide efforts. And most importantly for most communities is that once you go through the MVP process, it then it allows you to become a designated MVP community, which then opens up the door to additional granting opportunities. And finally, it integrates the municipal vulnerability plan with the hazard mitigation plan. All right, so what does all of that mean? Really what it's asking communities to do is to identify vulnerabilities within their own communities that are going to be impacted potentially by various climate change. A lot of folks tend to think when they think climate change, they think sea level rise. And absolutely that's part of it, but that's not the only part of it. There's intense rainfall that happens. There are impacts to your culverts. There's even a lot of communities that take into consideration when sea level rises on the coast, those people have to go someplace. So there's an inland migration. Those type of things impact your community as well. So the goal of this whole program is to implement priority actions that are identified through this process. As part of it, there is a rather large municipal commitment that needs to be undertaken. The first step is to establish a core team that's internally in the municipality. Essentially, there are a group of project managers that help inform and help guide the MVP process through. They coordinate the schedule, they send invitations, and they attend the planning meetings. They work with the MVP service provider to identify and engage all of the stakeholders, which I'll get to in just a few minutes. And they help coordinate staff interviews to collect the information and the mapping and the data and all of the other things that they're going to support the community workshops that are vitally important to this whole process. The community also has to commit to working continually on the municipal outreach and the engagement, and they have to attend and participate in the MVP plan development itself. Whoops. So the core team typically is comprised of municipal members, and they help guide the project manager within the community to help set up all of this information. They help conduct several interviews with key municipal staff, and then they help prepare all of the materials for the workshop, including base maps, climate change data relevant to the town, and other things that are important to you as a community. You know, every community is different. Every community has different needs and different items that are concerning to them that aren't necessarily concerning to other communities. But that's part of what this process is all about. It's helped to define those. Typically, we've seen core team members might be a mayor or the town administrator, the EMA director, police chief, town planner, you name it. It can be a lot of different folks who are championing these efforts, moving them forward, and to try to get this plan put together. Now, it doesn't have to be all of them. It may only be one of these people. It may be 5 or 6 folks. You know, that's really designated by the town and us working with the town to establish that core team and then to get the next steps prepared. Once that core team is established and they've kind of outlined what the next steps are, the majority of this process is the MVP workshop. And in the pre-COVID days, these would actually be in person, where everybody could stand around a table and point at a number of maps and say, this is affecting us over here, and this could be affecting us over there. We've had to change our approach a little bit with the COVID situation, and we do all of these things online. So it takes just a little bit longer than it normally would have. Normally, it's a full day of the workshops that everybody sits down, and in the morning you do one part of the program, and in the afternoon you do another part of the program. I think a lot of folks find that sitting in for an 8-hour Zoom meeting is probably counterproductive by the end of that. So what we've taken to recently is to have 1 week, we'll do one part of the program. We'll follow it up the week or two after that, and we'll do the second part of that program. While we are preparing that program, we start to identify some of the workshop participants. And on the right here is a list of folks that typically get invited. You know, we typically feel that the more the merrier when it comes to the workshop itself. So the more people, the more voices you get in the room, the more issues and vulnerabilities are identified, the better the plan can be. So you can see on the right here, here's a typical list. It's not all inclusive or all encompassing, but it's a list of folks that, you know, typically start to get the invites. The core team helps us develop this participant list so that we can make sure that we get it right sized and submitted. You know, this list has been as small as 5 or 6 people for a couple of communities, and it's been as big as 40 or 50 people for different communities. And we deal with those a little bit different when we get to the workshop itself. Once we're at the workshop, you can see on the right here, that's how we typically used to do it. We had sticky notes, we had plans, we had people writing on them, a very robust public engagement. We do it a little bit differently now. We follow the same process, but what we do is when we identify the 20, 30, 40 people that are coming to the workshop, we then put them into breakout rooms in Zoom, smaller groups that you know are broken out together in a way that helps us get to our objectives, and we come to the same results at the end of this. You know, what happens at the beginning of the meeting, we kind of walk everybody through the process, how it's going to be, and then we actively go through the process. On the left here is a typical agenda that we have when we get to the workshops. You can see here we had one on the 10th. What we would have typically called the morning session, and then we have another meeting the following week, which would have been in the past in the afternoon. And what this does is it starts to initially look at what hazards is the community as a whole, is your community concerned with. This particular community was concerned about extreme weather, about sea level rise, precipitation, high and low temperatures, and some of the issues that result from those. Through this process, the MVP provider will be helping guide and walk through and really trying a couple of different approaches in order to come to what are the 4 hazards that most affect Ashburnham. The result of that is putting it all together in a matrix. What we do is you'll see the top 4 hazards across the top. This is a different community, but their four hazards that they were concerned about were wind and ice and snow and inland flooding. And then they had some assets that kind of start on the top with town campus and work their way down to wharves and shore infrastructure, and identify all of the infrastructure assets that you have there. And then we talk about what are some of the concerns that you would have on a town campus from one of the four hazards above. So this is how we identify what are some of the issues that the community understands are plaguing your community. The next step from here is then we identify which ones are the priority. Because as everybody says, if everything's a priority, well, then nothing's a priority. And that happens a lot in municipalities. Everybody's the same when it comes to that. You've got 10,000 priorities here. Which do we start on first? That's part of the goal of this process, is to let's create a list of items that, we're going to have a higher priority and that we're going to start on first. These are broken down into three separate categories. Infrastructure. How does some of these hazards impact our infrastructure? The next category is the society. How do these impact some of our societal needs? Homeless populations, mobile home park that has a larger population than others, and then the final is the environment. How do some of these hazards affect us as an environment? So we use those three categories and all of these things that we come up with to then come up with a list of prioritized items. From there, they incorporate into the town master plan potentially, and we help update the hazard mitigation plan. I apologize, this says to expire in the spring. You can see that this was a holdover slide from another community where we do exactly the same type of presentation for them. And then to prioritize and focus on the projects that have the vulnerabilities. But most importantly is this bullet point that says plan ahead. It helps your community be forward thinking while being collaborative as a group. So once this is some of the outcomes that come out of this, as once we get through this process, then we have a summary of our findings and building the resilient plan. And then we have one more public listening session where we present the findings that we had there, just to make sure we've heard everything the right way and we've categorized it appropriately. Then we create the implementation plan. And I've highlighted this next here is that where we currently are, the MVP program has two types of grants. They have a planning grant. That's what Ashburnham has been awarded and the process we're going through right now. Once that prioritized implementation plan is put together, then it opens the community up to receive an action grant. That's the second phase of the MVP program that potentially will fund one of the items that you've identified here as a priority for you. It's a competitive program, so you still have to apply for it. It's not that, hey, it's on my list, so let's pay for it. But you can't get that second grant, that second round of grants, unless you've been on the unless you've been through the planning portion of it. And it needs to update every 5 years. And it really they strive to hold the community accountable. If you have things on your list, here's some things that you need to take care of. So it provides that community accountability. And then as I lastly mentioned, it helps update the hazard mitigation plan. Hazard mitigation really talks about all of the things that are hazards to your community. This particular portion of it is really focused on the resilience and the climate adaptation portion of it. So it's a little bit of an overlay, but it helps inform both of those plans. Okay. So that's a little bit of an overview of what the MVP program is itself. And, I'd like to open it up to see if you have any questions or comments.
Rosemary, do you have anything that you'd like to start with?
No, I'm all set. I've attended one of these hearings already for, like I said earlier, for the city of Gardner. So I've seen similar slides like this and a presentation. Obviously, the results for Gardner. But no, I'm all set. Thanks so much, Alan.
Bill?
I don't have any specific questions other than would it be possible for that PowerPoint to be sent over to us? at some point in time.
Sure, absolutely, I can do that.
And my question to you, Lance, is are you like the point person on this program?
Yes, so the program requires a person that has been certified to be an MVP trainer, and I am, and I will be running the point on this project for the town.
Okay, because we got the grant a while back, things fell through the cracks. So to quote an old movie line, we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. So how does our schedule look?
So our plan is to begin setting up the meetings with a core team shortly after the holidays here. That will put us into, I would say, February for our workshop, but February is a tough time, especially for folks that deal with snow. So probably early March will be our core workshop, and then we'll finish up the reporting. My intention would be by the end of March, and in preparation for, if all goes well and smoothly, in preparation for action grant time.
Because June is our deadline.
Yeah, we should. This process itself is the real big constraints are getting people together and to meet. That's the hardest challenge that we find. Setting a date and a time that works for the most amount of people, because we don't want to be exclusionary of anyone.
Okay. Brian, do you have anything?
No, he answered the questions with the dates. I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything?
I just had a quick question on who sets up the core team?
So it's usually a municipality driven. They'll assign a point person. Each municipality is a little bit different. So each municipality will assign a point person who I will work with, and my team will work with, to start identifying that core team. Ideally, it's meant to be an inclusionary process. So everybody, it would be great if everybody was involved in that. But it's the town's money and dollars too that we have to be concerned about. If you have too many people part of the core team, it's attending all of these meetings and being a part of everything. It drags the process on and it costs too much. So ideally, we like to have 3 or 4 people a part of it, but that will be through the town's point person.
So they assign them. The board doesn't participate in that.
Typically, yes.
The board will pick the point person though, correct?
Each community is a little bit different. Typically, we work with, the individual who is, the champion behind the municipality to drive it. Oftentimes, it's the planner or the public works chief. They're the kind of the point person for the project overall, and they help us. As I said, they help us develop the larger list for the workshop presentation. And I think typically, if the board would like to be involved at that point, that's an appropriate time to come back and say, here's the list of folks that we want to invite. Is there somebody else that you would like to?
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm good.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Lance.
All right, great. Thanks for the opportunity to present.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Now we move on to the Mass Trail Grant. That's you, Rosemarie, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. So I brought up at our last meeting that the rail trail feasibility grant is due February 1st. So it's a Mass Trails grant. We would be applying for, if we got approval, for a feasibility study that would show potentially the connection of the Ashburnham Rail Trail to the North Central Pathway. I spoke today with a contact of mine from the state, and they reaffirmed what their suggestion was last year, that we include in the feasibility study scope of work 2 potential plans to connecting to the North Central Pathway. So one would be accessing the Cheshire Railroad line and connecting to the North Central Pathway via Old County Road and Teal Road in Winchendon. And the second option would be connecting, going straight up the Cheshire line to Route 12 and connecting to Winchendon at North Ashburnham Road. I do not have updated costs for it, but the average cost is looking to be somewhere around for both studies, somewhere around $77,000, 80% of which would be paid for by the state. And Ashburnham would have to put up a 20% match on that. So 20% match would be roughly $15,000, which we technically have. Of course, it's the Ashburnham Economic Development Commission for $15,000, and there's $2,700 available through the Ashburnham Rail Trail.
When does it have to be submitted?
The grant has to be submitted February 1st. The match and it's a reimbursement grant. That's the other technicality. We would have to front this as a community, pay it, and then we'd be reimbursed the 80% by the state. So that the application's due February 1st.
Okay. Bill, got anything to add to that?
My 2 cents would be, this is, I think, a very important project for the town of Ashburnham. You know, we know with the rail trail, with the 101 tip that's being worked on, there's some accommodations are being made in there as far as a path and things like that go. So I think honestly, the rail trail's been going on for a bunch of years. I know a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into it, and we've struggled mightily over the years. So I think we're at a point in our history where we're either going to do this and figure out a way to connect it, or we're going to have to fold our tent and call it a day. Because I just don't think we can continue to kind of languish along here. So I think we have the money that's available to us. I would think that with Brian's help, we'd be able to figure out how to be able to, to front the money so we get reimbursed for it. So I'd like to see us go ahead and apply for this grant and take a shot about moving it forward.
Brian, how do you feel about making the numbers work?
Sure. So I think there's 2 options, which will be completed before the February 1st deadline. So the plan is we have special town meeting on proposing it for January 26th. So we could put it at the special town meeting and either look to transfer it from free cash with a reimbursement that would come into miscellaneous down the road, or we use the economic development money, have that established to set aside, and then replenish that economic development money. But those are the only 2 ways that I see that we can do it, because there's no line item in the budget to cover, that type of cash.
Okay.
Would one of the wrinkles be the access of the economic development money? Do we have a warrant article to make it easier or an appropriate way to access that fund?
So that's what I'd be looking at, to have Debbie Phillips' opinion on that and get that on the special town meeting warrant so that we can get it done before the 26th of January to allocate those funds.
So it'd be borrowing from economic development.
So we check with Deb Phillips to see if we could use that as like a revolving type thing. So the money comes out of economic development, and when it comes back in, or it comes out of free cash and becomes free cash when the 80% comes back in. And I can check with Julie, the accountant, to see how that can roll through. But I think those are the only two means that I'm aware of to get funds available for this project.
I did forget to mention that the award isn't made till June. So it probably won't all happen till next fiscal year.
So that warrant can't go to a special town meeting and have to be an annual town meeting warrant?
I don't know. All I'm saying is that the grants usually are awarded in June, so the actual work won't commence until 2022.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of applying for grants without funding. We had the Council on Aging van, and we were scrambling to get free cash certified to pay that bill on time. I'm not looking to do that going forward. I want to find the monies before I apply for the grants.
Oh, no, I just was mentioning that. I agree with you completely. I don't want to just blindly apply for something and be scrambling. I agree completely. I just wanted to let you know that I don't know how it works when we're crossing into a fiscal year, if you see what I'm saying.
Sure. So how it works, I'd encumber the funds in the account that they're going to come out of. And as long as we have a PO type order out there, I can allocate it and let that roll from fiscal year to fiscal year.
So the only other piece that I had is economic development had voted in January of 2019, $15,000 for the match. Ashburnham Rail Trail, there's money sitting in an account that should be in a town account, not unless it's rolled over into general fund, but it was $2,700 a year ago. So that would be money that could be accessed as well.
Sure. If that was accidentally rolled over to the general fund, it'd be in our free cash. We'd allocate it back out.
Okay.
So it sounds to me that we have the financial wherewithal to do it. We have to get that whole economic development fund situation sorted out anyway. I prefer we do that at special town meeting to get that squared away. And like Rosemary said, we have to have the grant application in, but we wouldn't actually have to be, if we're fortunate enough to get it, the work wouldn't happen until the next fiscal year. So I'd be willing to offer up a motion. Rosemary, are you going to do the grant application?
Yes, I actually did it last year. So it's partially already done. I just have to redo the mapping. We have to update the costs, which might impact how we fund this too. I mean, I don't know what the most updated costs would be. Weston and Sampson had given us estimates. So their top was $83,000, which would be a $16,000, $600 match. That was their maximum, but that was last year's dollars. So we got to update that. The other thing too is if we are going to vote on this, I'd rather, not knowing how much it was cost, I wouldn't want to say, hey, we're taking it out of economic development when we know they're at, I think, 74th, that we might not have enough money in economic development to front it. So we need to keep that in mind too, if the numbers come in higher. I think there's 74,000 in economic development.
How about a motion to create an article for the special town meeting to fund the possibility of receiving a rail trail grant? That way we go to town meeting first and we know if the people even want to allocate the money to that, and then we can apply for the grant. Like Brian says, it's not good to apply, then not know if you got the money that you need. But if we can have that special town meeting sooner than the grant deadline, that'll cover all our bases.
So what do you want the motion to sound like, Leo?
To have a warrant article requesting the allocation of funds to cover a rail trail grant. And that would be, what's the proper name of that grant, Rosemary?
Mass Trail Grant.
Trail grant.
Okay,
So here's my question, Leo. So I mean, I can certainly make that motion. I think we need to, as far as a warrant article goes, we don't have to, I don't think we have to make a motion to create a warrant article. But I think we need to have a conversation about what the warrant article is going to look like, potentially where the money's going to come from, although Brian's identified a couple things. The numbers are certainly unclear as to what the potential could be. So I don't know if we need to make a motion on a warrant article.
Then just hold off on that for down the road.
Well, I'd like to get something, I'd certainly like to get a motion on the books or a vote on the books that authorizes us to apply for the grant. Because I think that it's important that, I think the state wants us to do this. I think it's important that we give them some indication we're interested in doing that. And then over the next couple of weeks, as Brian's, well, we got a warrant, we got a agenda item coming up on warrant articles, so we can start working through the warrant article piece. I mean, what do we want it to do? Like I said, is it economic development? Is it, how's the funding mechanism going to work? We're not going to certainly solve that tonight.
So we'll do the motion to authorize the application pending the identification of funding.
So moved. Then that's the application for the Mass Trails Grant.
Okay,
And that,
all right. All in favor, Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes.
All right, now we move to the downtown grant, and I believe you had some information on that, Bill, correct?
I think that's,
Yeah, that'd be news to me, Leo.
Okay,
this is,
sorry about that.
no worries. I attended a webinar along with Kirby Lacey, the Chair of Economic Development, last Wednesday for a local rapid recovery planning assistance grant to revitalize downtowns in response to COVID. So it's a rapid response grant. And no money that the town has to front, no match, no reimbursement. It is not a competitive grant, meaning that all 351 communities are eligible. If we are awarded the grant, we will be assigned a plan facilitator. And then later on, subject matter experts that will do community outreach during a 4 to 6 week period. They will diagnose what they think the impacts are due to COVID to our downtown, and identify and make recommendations that come in terms of short, medium, and long-term goals, and then make suggestions regarding implementation. So what they're doing is they're looking at our physical environment with a creative mind. And when they talk about short-term goals, they're talking about short-term goals that don't really cost very much money, if any at all, which are the best kind. And then basically we're handed the plan. They give us a resource list of ways that we could fund the project. And they've actually said that as these roll out, the state will come forward with other grants that will help to fund some of the implementation for some of these recommendations. So there might be more money coming down the pike, so to speak. So after the webinar, I spoke to Kirby Lacey, and she was excited about it, and we'll bring it up at the Economic Development Commission meeting tomorrow. She's volunteered to apply for this grant and hopes to get the vote from Economic Development to move forward with it.
So they're gonna need a vote from us also, correct?
Right. So Leo, one of the things that's interesting, Rosemary had sent over,
Yes, and it's due December 18th. Sent the
Yeah.
application in.
had sent over information I was reading through on this grant. And much like MVP, I'm finding that a lot of these grants are what I call building block grants. That if you're not doing the first phase, you can't get to the second phase or third phase. So I think this is another good opportunity for the town. It's there's not a lot of heavy lifting financially. So I would make a motion that we request the Economic Development Commission to apply for the local rapid recovery planning grant due by December 18th.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes.
All right, now we're on to the special town meeting warrant article deadline, which is going to be December 31st by 4 p.m. So I guess, Brian, you tell all your department heads if you're going to allow them to ask for anything, that's their deadline.
Fair enough.
Hey, I have a question for Brian. Brian, do we have any warrant articles ready to go from things that we've talked about over the past few months?
I'd have to grab my list. I don't know if anything's actually ready to go. I know capital's the big thing I have. There are a couple small things. I think the Board of Selectmen, a name change, and there was a property I think we were trying to acquire. Someone wanted to deed gift to the town.
Have we done anything with the rescinding that town meeting vote back in the 70s about Winchester Park? Is that on the list?
I believe it is. Deb Phillips, I think, has 2 items. I'm not sure if Mary's.
Yeah, she did say she was gonna write those up, but then when we have the delay in the special town meeting. But we'll
And
get,
then, are we going to talk about at some point in time, again, not tonight, the whole economic development money that's sitting there, about how we're going to manage that?
I think we just touched on it briefly a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, we did, but I just want to make sure that, again, we may choose to not use that money. Maybe we take it out of free cash or whatever, but whether we do or we don't, we need to do something with the way that fund was set up, because that was free cash money initially, but the way it's set up right now, the way we're accessing it isn't certainly a best practice, and we need to get that cleared up before we move forward.
Brian, do you know if Debbie's working on that?
We can have her. Mary, is that one of the items?
I'm not sure, but I have a list, so I will certainly send it right off to her.
Thank you.
Okay, would you follow up with her on what she's working on, just so that she knows we have a time frame?
Will do.
Okay. So I guess that's it on special town meeting at this point. Now we come to the pavement management program. That's where you got some information, Bill.
I do. I actually had a little information on the rapid recovery thing, but after about the first 30 seconds, I would have expended all my information. So it was best that Rosemary do that. So Mary, do you have the capacity to share your screen, or Brian share your screen on these 2 documents that we have?
Brian's better at it than I.
You guys, are you looking at the town of Ashburnham 3-year pavement plan? I
Yeah,
can't-
that's it right there. Yeah, that's good. So I'm not going to bore everyone by going through and reading this. It's again, if we get a positive action on these things tonight, we can get them posted on the website for people to look at. But I just wanted to speak briefly. I know Steve and Randy are on the call, so they were helpful in help putting this information together, along with Brian, myself, and the folks over at Beta. If you remember, going back a year or so ago, the town voted to do a pavement study or analysis of all the roads in town. That's the basis for the information that we're going to be putting forward tonight. The information that you see here just more clearly articulates what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. I think this strategy and the goals, I think they've always been present in the DPW. The big issue is that we've never provided the funding that they needed to effectively do this work. And with Brian's help, we're starting down the road, no pun intended, of getting some more appropriate levels of funding in place so that we can get these roads caught up and we can and just again move forward so that it becomes more regular maintenance than total reconstruction of roads and things like that. So I certainly would welcome any comments or any questions. I do my best to answer them. And then if once we get done with that, we'll pull up another document, which is the actual listing of the roads. So does anybody have any questions about what's up there?
Bill, I read it the other day and I didn't get to read the email that you sent today. Is what's up here now? Any questions, any changes from what you sent the other day?
There was a couple word changes on after the paving criteria, but this document didn't change all that much. Most of the changes were to the other document where we had to move a couple streets around. We had them in the wrong spots. And so we just reclassified them to make sure they were where they needed to be. This document that you're looking at did not fundamentally change.
Okay.
So I do want to make one comment. So Bill and I, Steve and Randy worked well on this. We're all going in the same direction. I just want to point out that, you know, this one has a vote of the selectmen on the plan here. I understand the point of why you want to vote. You know, my liking would have been to have that notifications, because your control is always to not fund it in cash the following year. But again, I think, you know, Bill's concern was that's the following year. I want to address it now. So he left the word vote in there to be voted on. Just bringing that up, that this has you guys voting on a paving plan that, you know, you guys fund anyways, so.
I just had a quick comment. I was under the impression through, you know, just, you know, being on this board for 3 years and knowing other select board members, and Leo, maybe you would know better, but I thought the Board of Selectmen did vote on the paving plan.
If we did, it was a long time ago. Traditionally, there would be a plan out there and it kind of got coordinated between the town administrator and the DPW superintendent. I don't really remember voting, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I've talked to a few select board members, and they did, when the Depot Road project came up, they told me that they in the past had voted. Now they voted on that 5-year plan that used to be up apparently
Yeah,
on the website.
That's more what I'm thinking of.
Exactly. There hasn't been any vote since this paving plan. But we have precedent that we have voted in the past, I guess is what I'm saying, Brian.
So let me just bring up a couple things. First, thank you for mentioning the 5-year plan, because when we first started out, we started out with a 5-year plan. And in one of the meetings, I think Steve and Randy came to us and said, you know, we'd love to give you 5 years, but it's a really, really moving target. And when you get into those 4th and 5th years, what you put down there isn't necessarily what happens, because it's just a moving target. So they had asked, and I agreed to convert it back to a 3-year program. And that we think there's a higher probability that what's there is going to stay there. However, again, Brian and I respectfully disagree on this, and I'm very respectful of his position on it. And again, we've gone back and forth a bunch of times on it. And I just look at this as that it's a way for the Board of Selectmen to reaffirm what DPW is suggesting that we do. When you look at the second document they're going to show, there was no discussion about what the roads were, what they were going to be, who was going to do it. All that information came from the DPW based on the survey that was done by Beta. So as we talk about it in here, that it's data driven, it's impartial, and it's measurable. So all those criteria are being touched on. So I think it's important that the board annually take a vote on it. And then if something happens after we vote on it, then all the town administrator has to do is give us a notification that, you know, something blew up here or something happened there, and we're gonna have to, you know, move it around and make some changes. I look at more of a courtesy notification than anything else. But like I said, I know Brian and I are on different sides of the fence on this one, but no matter where you go, there you are.
Well, I'll say we're only on different sides in that little part of it, Billy. I mean, think we're all in agreement on the plan is good, and the way we approached it worked very well. So I'm good with that.
I just have one more comment, that the thing that's most important to me is transparency, right? So, you know, when there has to be a change, you had mentioned the word, Brian, notifying the board, and which could just be sending us an email. But I think the bigger goal should be that in meetings like this, it's brought up. Maybe DPW, you know, shows up at a board meeting and they explain why it's happening, right? I mean, I don't think we're very good at getting information out to people. And when it comes to roads, trust me, they want all the information they can get, right? So if there's any deviation from a plan, we have to be very transparent. It has to be something that happens before we do the work. There has to be a conversation like we're having now at a board meeting. And then, you know, maybe that's, you know, I don't want to use this word, but it's almost like the vote is the board buying into it, right? It's a formality. It's sort of like the Queen giving her blessing, right? She doesn't control the Parliament, but she knows about it, right? I mean, you get the figurehead, right? We know that the TA is the CEO of the town, but, you know, we can't be working in bubbles, right? That's the most important thing to me. Transparency and making sure that we're all on the same page as we move forward.
So, Rosemary, I completely agree. And I agree with Bill also. Like I said, I have no problem with this being out there. I have no problem with notifications and everything else. I'm all on board with that. I think DPW is all on board with that. That's why we're doing this. My only little thing was the need of a vote. But if, you know, that's what you guys decide on, I'm good with it, because I'm going to notify you anyways. And again, if I notify you incorrectly, the following year it becomes a funding issue.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that just to give you a little bit more information, a little bit more background here, I did a little bit of digging as far as the numbers go. And Brian, Steve, or Randy, if I mess this up, by all means, jump in. So you'll see on the second document when we get there that this is a $13.5 million challenge for the town of Ashburnham, based on current numbers. And that report is a snapshot in time. Things are always changing, but right now it's a $13.5 million problem for us. So with Chapter 90 money, which we primarily used in recent years for paving, that's about $350,000 a year. So based on that spend, because we haven't really put too much money into roads, the last few years we put $0 into roads above that. So if you take that 13.5 million and you simply divide it out, it's 38.5 years before we would get this paving plan completed. I'm pretty comfortable in telling you that the roads aren't going to last 38 years, the ones that we're paving now. And I know nothing about paving roads. So the other thing is, I went back and looked at the last 10 years of Chapter 90 funding, And Chapter 90 funding has been as low as $262,000 a year, as high as $520,000 a year. So that 10-year average works out to be $347,699, right about what we're expected to get next year for, $350,000 for next year's allotment on Chapter 90. So these numbers are not in stone, but in talking to Brian, what we're looking at doing is taking a chunk of dough out of the free cash allotment that would allow DPW to actually start paving in the spring, because you can only use Chapter 90 money when it's available, and we've expended the Chapter 90 money for this fiscal year, so that new fiscal year wouldn't kick in until July 1. So if we're able to take, again, rough number, $425,000 out of free cash, potentially in the new fiscal year, another $125,000 out of the budget to add to the roads, plus the Chapter 90 money of $350,000, that would mean in the next calendar year, which actually covers 2 fiscal years, we'd be investing about $900,000 in roads, which is almost 3 times more than we've ever invested in the past. So I think it's a big commitment on the town. I think it's a type of commitment we need to make to get caught up on what we're doing here.
All makes sense to me. All makes sense to me. I agree with the vote. I think the responsibility should fall on this board and not on the DPW, because these street plans are a moving target. Everything's down. It's been engineered out, but a water main breaks tonight at 2 in the morning. Nobody finds it till 4 or 5 in the morning, and the whole road's washed out. Well, that just kind of put the screws to a plan. Those things happen, but if and when something like that happens, it comes before the board and we reallocate the plan. So I like the thought of a vote, and it might take some of the heat off of the DPW. They get enough complaints. Let's take some of it over in this direction. So I'm in favor of voting on the plan.
So does anybody else have any more questions or comments about this piece of it? If not, then Brian, could you put up the actual street listing?
Can you see it there, Bill?
Not yet. No, still the same one.
Let me, I'll pause the screen sharing. Let me start it again. When I do that, it stops it. How about now?
Yep, there you go. So again, this is a lengthy document. It's 13 or 14 pages long. And what we did is, again, this is all the data that we got from the beta report. And there's a lot more data that's available, but this is what we put together that we thought made sense. So just for now, I'll just deal with the first page. So if you look up on the left, there's a key there that outlines exactly what's contained in the report and what those things mean. So it's pretty self-explanatory. When you get to RSR, which is the road surface rating, so essentially the closer you are to 100, then the better condition the road is in. Just like when you were going to school, if you got 100, it was a beautiful thing. So the listing is in alphabetical order. The first grouping is town accepted roads that have been expected and essentially are paved. The second group is town accepted roads that are gravel. The third one, this is what we talked about last week. The yellow highlighted roads are scenic roads in town. And then the last section is private roads. And one other notification there is TIP. This was one of the additions that we had today, and whoever thought of this, it was a good thought, because there's that TIP project on 101, that is in the process. They're still a couple of years away from when it's going to happen, but that's a multi-million-dollar project that the town is going to be the beneficiary of, in a few years down the road. So that's in there as well. So the way this is broken out, it breaks the roads down into smaller sections. I think it provides a lot of information for people to look at. And if, Brian, if you could just scroll down to, you get to the blue section there where it's gravel. So here's the roads that, again, these are town roads, but they're maintained as gravel right now. That's why you don't see any ratings on those or any cost or things like that. Those are pretty much maintained on an annual basis with whatever needs to happen, happens. So, but we did want to identify them so that people know exactly what's going on. And then the last group, which is right there, which is private roads, that is a very long list. As I've said before, I would bet you there's a significant number of people in town that think they live on a town road, but in fact, they live on a private road. And this pavement management program does not deal with any of the private roads for obvious reasons. So that $13.5 million figure that's earlier in the report only relates to the paved roads that are town owned. So again, I would open it up for any questions, comments. I'm really pleased with this document, not because I worked on it, because a lot of people were involved with putting it together, but for me, it clearly defines exactly where we are as a community, and it puts a clear plan out there. You'll see in the estimated action column over the next 3 years what's projected to be paved based on the information that we have right now. So it is what it is, and we'll put it on the website if it gets approved tonight. And if somebody wants to know, what's happening with the roads, there'll be a document on the website that they can refer to whenever they want to.
And we'll say Steve Nims is the one who approached me this morning about putting the Mass Tips 101 South on there. So I want to put a thank out to Steve and Randy for their help, and Bill also. I thought we did a good job working together.
All right, anybody else?
Claire has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I can't see her.
Okay. I thought this was a very eye-opening chart, and I really want to thank you for organizing this because it really clearly identified those roads that are scenic as well as those that are private. I had a hard time finding Fitchburg Road on this list.
I think we've eliminated Fitchburg Road, Claire.
I thought so too, and I'm glad because, who uses it, right?
Can I say something?
I couldn't
Mary?
find it. Yeah.
Mary,
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Pittsburgh Road is a state road,
Road.
not a town.
So's Water Street.
Water Street is just a numbered road. Pittsburgh, the town of Ashburnham only goes from Old Nims Road to River Styx. The state owns the rest of it. We do not work on it or treat it or do anything to it. Water Street is a numbered route. That's all that is. But Fitchburg Road is a state road, as is Winchington Road. So they're not part of the town of Ashburnham's road system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Route 119 to add to that.
Correct.
Yeah,
All right.
I got to tell you, for me, this has been an eye-opening experience, and I'll be very frank with you. I'm not sure where some of these roads are. I've spent a lot of time traveling roads to try to see what's going on, but there is some question marks in here for me. So that'll give me something to do over the next couple of months to take a ride to see where some of these places are.
And so the point of Fitchburg Road, like to hear the feedback, maybe that's something we address in the next version. Maybe we put state-owned roads in no town, we put a note on there for that. It's easy to add another section to this. So thank you.
All right, so do we have any motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve the 3-year pavement management plan dated December 14th, 2020, with the accompanying pavement management road listing.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes.
All right, moving on. We're coming to the status of 2 committees. the IT Advisory Committee, and the Winchester Park Committee. IT Advisory, that doesn't even do anything anymore, does it? Brian, that would be advising your position. There a use for them anymore?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, is there anybody, Mary, maybe you'd know, is there anybody presently on it?
No, we haven't met. It was basically for the fiber work, and when we left our former IT company and took on the new, so it was utilized to advise on those two categories, and they both have been taken care of.
So, but are there any members presently that think that they could be called on?
I don't think so. I think they met for those two purposes, and they haven't met in, I think it's well over almost 2 years now.
Okay. Bill or Rosemarie, any comment on the IT Advisory Committee?
No, I mean, when I think there was just one person last we looked, Mary. I was trying to pull, did they do anything even for the annual town report? I mean,
No, I don't even think they did when they were active, because they were just an advisory that met.
so they're an ad hoc, yeah.
Yeah, ad hoc, just for those two topics.
So who appointed them?
I believe it was a town,
TA?
I'm not sure.
I probably have that somewhere.
It was a while back.
My only comment is that if we don't know who they are, we don't know what they do, we probably don't need them anymore.
Yeah, no, I
They are. I do remember the people, but we just haven't used them in quite some time.
So I would make a recommendation, actually, I would make a motion that the board vote to disband the IT committee.
Well, I mean, the one thing I just want to make sure is if it's not a Board of Selectmen appointed committee, wouldn't that be a TA thing? I'm looking to see whether or not it's on our liaison list. I don't know whether it matters. It's a procedural question, right? If we didn't appoint them, would we disband them?
Well,
We can vote to eliminate them, and if it's not us that eliminates them, that vote can give Brian the authority to eliminate them.
or at least give them the direction.
Exactly.
Okay, yep.
So the motion again, Bill?
The motion would be to disband the IT committee.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes. So let me, on Winchester Park, let me, if I could, Leo, speak first to that.
Okay.
So I reached out a few weeks ago, probably longer than that now, to Elizabeth Branham, who's the current chair. And again, I wasn't on the board, but my understanding is that that committee's been in hiatus for an extended period of time. There's obviously with COVID, they haven't met. And I know there was some stuff going around with different meetings before. So I reached out to them as the clerk, trying to get caught up with meeting minutes and things like that. And they're not able to produce any. So I had actually been to a couple of those meetings. So in addition to, there really isn't anything going on right now with that committee. There's some serious questions about what the committee can do and what it can't do. We're waiting on town council to get back to us some direction there. There certainly isn't any money set aside to do anything up there. And it doesn't look like there's going to be anything coming down on the road in the future. So I'm thinking that we should take the same action with this committee, thank them for their service and disband it at this time, and we'll just see what happens over the next year or so. If there's a need to reform that committee, we can always do that.
Okay. And I think we should send them letters of thank you.
I can take care of that.
Okay. because we don't want them to feel slighted.
Yeah, again, so I think they've had some trouble, and again, I always stand to be corrected, but I think they had some trouble getting some traction. I don't think the meetings were attended by enough people so that they even had a quorum in most cases so that they could do anything. And based on what Elizabeth had said to me, since she's been chairman, there weren't any minutes that were taken on any of the meetings. So again, I just think that it's problematic on a lot of fronts right now. And then you throw in there with COVID and the inability to do anything right now with funding. I just think we should move on.
And they were put on hold quite a while ago because of town council says that property takes up 2 or 3 different parcels. There's like 2 or 3 different deeds with restrictions on them. So that became a legal issue up in the air that
Right.
it's been a long-term thing for town council to have to work on to resolve it.
Yeah, exactly.
So that kind of puts the brakes on what those people can do also.
Correct.
So do I get a motion?
I will give you a motion that we thank the people on the committee, but we should disband the Winchester Park Committee.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes. And Mary, if you could get me the complete list of people that are on that committee, I'll make sure that this week I get emails out to them and thanking them for their service and let them know what we did.
Okay, will do.
All right, now we move on to the ambulance billing update. Now that we've had the chief attend this nice, long, informative meeting, we're going to put him on a hot spot. But I think we're going to start with you, Brian.
Sure. So I want to thank Chief Plant for coming on today. So we've met a couple times and we've talked with Coastal. Bob, Chief Plant's talked to Coastal several times. He, myself, and Coastal met earlier in the year. So we've gone through the list and there's $161,000 out there. That's a lot of old stuff. They haven't done write-offs since January 2nd of 2018. And in that write-off, they only did through September 30th, 2016. That write-off then was $89,000. So we're picking up a lot of stuff. So we're looking at 4 years worth of obsolete stuff. And through the recommendation of Coastal and discussions with Bob, we're looking to write off $79,596.89. So, some of that is people are deceased and some of it's, all deemed uncollectible through Coastal. So the remaining balance, Coastal believes we can work on and use a collection agency to approach to try to get our money back. And Bob, is it 50%, 50-50 on a collection agency? Do you recall?
I think the one that they were looking at was about 30% or 33%.
To the collection agency? Okay. So we're looking at that as an option. I did discuss with some people regarding how other communities do this. They don't send them to collections to a third party because the third party is going to mark them at the credit bureaus. And a lot of it is their local residents. So it gets a lot of disgruntled people in town. However, Bob did mention to me that a community sent to collections everyone who used our services that didn't live in town. So I thought that was an interesting perspective. Again, that's kind of all come up real recent. So we're looking for your opinion and thoughts on that. Bob, do you have anything else? Did I miss anything?
No, that pretty much covers it. I mean, we identified those 6 categories and we'll, tomorrow I'll touch base again with Coastal Billing. And if they need a final letter or recommend that we go to collections, then they'll be able to sort that out probably during the course of the next week or so.
Okay, the 79,596.89. Is that what you're asking that we write off?
That is correct.
And that's not anything to go to collections?
That is correct.
Okay, and then how much is there to go to collections if we decide to go that route?
It was 81,637.
Okay, three questions. If you go to collections, is it legal to only take out-of-towners to collection? Or do we get into a discrimination issue? The next thing is, people might be mad at us from town, but if we're taking them to collections, the hospital's probably already got them in collections. So is that really an issue? I mean, granted, I get it. Some people don't have insurance and stuff, and we're not here to make it difficult for them. But having once been on the fire department, I know there are people that are termed as frequent flyers. And sometimes their situation is not a medical emergency, but it takes up town's resources. So I guess my biggest question is on the discrimination aspects.
So I don't believe it's a discrimination aspect because it's not going to go away. What we'd be looking to do, we'd look to probably put the list, or maybe somehow we can check off a list to work them ourselves. I'm not sure we could hold up permits and whatnot, but there is some permitting rules that prevent, outstanding debt. However, HIPAA violations kind of come into play here. So we've got a little bit of a thin line to kind of walk here. According to the town policy, anything less than $500 with a hardship can be written off. So I think a lot of people just didn't realize they needed to fill out a form and apply for a hardship. And that's one of the requirements is when you send them the late notice that they have a hardship option, and that will get reviewed by the chief first because of the HIPAA violations. And then he would approach me with that. That's kind of the way I understand the policy to work. Anything up to $2,000, the town administrator has the allowance to abate. Anything over that, you really can't do. So that's kind of the way the policy works. A lot of it is all hardship stuff though. But I can definitely check with Deb Phillips to see if we send someone out of town versus someone in town, is that a violation? I'm more than happy to check. But that was brought to my attention that another community is already doing that.
Yeah, that might be what I would lean towards if we were allowed. I mean, our own people, most of them are taxpayers, and it's one big community. But the out of towners, shame on them. So, Bill or Rosemarie, how do you feel?
Well, the policy piece is interesting. So should I assume that, and again, Chief, this isn't a shot at you. Should I assume that we haven't been following the policy and sending notices to the people that are in arrears about their ability to apply for a hardship?
I really don't have that answer. All of the billing my part of the billing until I became chief was on the other end to get it to coastal.
Okay.
And it's always been handled by the chief and the town administrator. So I can't honestly answer that. It appears that, but they did do some write-offs. I think Jack Perro at least looked into it when he was here as interim chief as well. So I won't say that there was strict adherence, but there was some. And also, some of these numbers are very old. There's actually about $20,000. It dates back to 2007, between 2007 and 2010, that went to First Financial Collections and somehow ended up back on our aging report. So that's something else I talked to Coastal about, so that should actually just go away. This is a little more of a forensic look at it. The person that used to handle our account is retired. The woman handling it now looked way deep, all the way back to the beginning of us working with Coastal. So that's why the numbers is a little bigger. And I think she dug up things that probably weren't readily available the last time we did it.
So Chief, let me ask you this question. What's your level of comfort as it relates to working with Coastal? Are they doing a good job for us, or do we need to look at another provider?
No, I am very comfortable with them. We've worked a lot. There's different aspects other than just billing, managing the patient accounts, as well as even data input to the state collection system. And they've worked hand in hand with us right along through the whole process. They've been fantastic, to be honest with you.
All right, good. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, again, we certainly shouldn't be changing vendors if we don't have to. So, but I had to ask the question because, look, we're going to have write-offs. It's going to happen all the time. That's the way it goes. Whether, we bill at a particular rate and the insurance reimburses at a lower rate, and you got a delta number you have to deal with. My push on this is that we just need to do it on a regular basis. If it's quarterly, whatever the policy calls for, we just need to be trying to stick to that as much as possible, doing things on a regular basis. I wouldn't take the collections option completely off the table because there are certain circumstances where maybe you wouldn't want to do it, but then there may be other circumstances where people have just chosen they're not going to pay for no other reason. And I think with all the services that we have to charge for, everybody needs to pay their fair share. So if somebody's trying to not do it just because they don't want to do it, then I'm more than happy to take them to collections and try to get the money from them. So I don't know Mr. Chairman, if I can give you a straight up answer on if we should or shouldn't do it, but I think the opportunity or the option should be left on the table as we move forward.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, at our next meeting, the ambulance policy is one of the ones I've chosen to come up on the Board of Selectmen policies. So we'll be reviewing that also. For right now, though, the 79,596.89. I'd like to see something get resolved to get rid of that. And that number for the amount of time, Chief, doesn't seem as high as the last time I was on the board. I remember when we did it around 2017 or 18, Claire was sitting in the crowd and the look on her face, the shock of it, it was a high number or higher than this number. So Bill and
we've improved our billing program, our ambulance patient care report program, that's the information that goes down to Coastal. And I think that change in that program probably made a significant difference in what we can collect. And because insurance companies will look at the data they get, and that's a far superior program than we had in the past. So,
didn't it go as bad in the past? If you forgot to check one box, they'd kick it back or something?
Yeah, but that was all on us, which really delayed some of the billing. And some of this is pool money, like motor vehicle accidents. There's only so much, available. If a hospital takes it, then it's goes to the individual. This program does that for us. If it's not spot on, it won't even let the guys close the program out to go to the next phase, which is billing.
Okay.
Well, at the end of the day, Leo, we're never going to see the list anyway because it's got HIPAA considerations. So it's not like the board is going to be making decisions about who we're going to go after or who we're not going to go after. But I will give you a motion that would request the town of Ashburnham write off $79,596.89 of uncollectible ambulance billing.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
And Bill Johnson, yes.
So Brian, you're gonna look at the legal aspects on collections. And like I say, it's coming, the whole policy is coming before the board at our next meeting as we're reviewing our Board of Selectmen policies. In fact, now that we've covered ambulance billing, we're going to Board of Selectmen policies.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good night.
Thank you. And Board of Selectmen policies, the first one on the list was Town of Ashburnham policy regarding acceptance of gifts. Did you guys have a chance to go over that one?
I did.
Okay. Any questions or issues or suggestions about it?
I just wanted to give a little bit of framework. This was one of the policies that Debbie Phillips reviewed.
Okay,
So it was adopted in 2010. A lot of it is MGL.
okay,
So, and that's, nothing has changed with that. That I don't think many people know it exists, because we
Okay.
did have a problem with this,
yep,
if you remember. And yeah, so it's getting this information out to committees and department heads and letting them know, that this exists. And it's not just monetary gifts. It can be, an actual physical item. It
I-
can be a piece of land. And it can also be the use of a facility.
okay. I remember going back about 30 years now, a department had solicited a gift of a computer. The town wasn't quite computerized at that time. And the entity said, fine, and they, I don't remember if they bought the computer or gave the money to buy it, but that created an issue. So, this covers those things. So you feel that where Debbie has reviewed it in the not so distant past, that it can be considered as being up to date?
Well, that's what she said to me, because like I said, we had a specific instance last year.
I remember that.
And but the biggest issue is making sure that folks know about this. And the other thing that I think that some committees or commissions, boards don't know about, unless they've read the handbook, the appointed committee handbook, that as a municipal government, you can't fundraise. So it's not just the acceptance of gifts, you can't fundraise.
Right.
So it's two different things. I don't know whether or not that's something that would be a different policy, or you could potentially put this in here, because is fundraising soliciting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I come walking up to you and ask you for a donation for the flower pot,
exactly.
that's soliciting a donation.
That's right. But we don't say that in this policy, that fundraising is something you can't do as a municipal government. We don't use the word. So I don't know whether or not that's something else we should bring up. That's the only thing I thought about. It's sort of like the library. They have the Friends of the Library, which is a not-profit that fundraises, and the money is for the benefit of the library. So you always have this not-for-profit. Brian had mentioned that oftentimes Council of Agings have Friends of Council of Aging. It's the same thing. They would fundraise to purchase items for the Council of Aging.
There's a town I once worked in, and it was the town name called Friendly Seniors. And that was like the arm that did fundraising.
Correct. So I don't know whether it's appropriate to, change this up a little bit to make that very clear. Is that a separate policy? I don't know.
Or
I
it
didn't
could be, it
that
could
up.
be added to the handbook.
It is in the handbook, I believe. But I don't know whether or not we want it in here because as we just discussed, a gift or solicitation of a gift, fundraising, what's the difference, right? Because, maybe it's a little unclear. Maybe we just need to define it. I don't know. It might be something we want to ask her.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that where you can't go out and fundraise, that's got to be MGL, correct?
Correct.
So we don't necessarily have to have a policy if there's already a law that prohibits it from happening. But maybe what we should do is, in the case of the policy, I think we should make sure that, maybe we do it through our the liaisons, would be to send a copy of the policy out to all the boards that we're responsible for. And then the ones that Brian's responsible for, maybe he could send the same thing out to put everybody on notice that here's the deal. Here's what you can do and what you can't do. And then if find the appropriate statute from MGL about fundraising and maybe just send a blurb out about that as well to the same people. So we can say that we put everybody on notice and made them aware of it.
I do know with the fundraising, it goes as far as if you have like a
Yep.
30 or a
Yep.
40-year employee that retires,
So I
You
did not look at.
you can't go out and sell tickets for their retirement party. It all falls under this.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't buy refreshments with town funds.
Right. So I like your idea, Bill, of giving copies out to our various boards and committees. So that will bring us to the next policy that we got up for review tonight, and that's the remote participation policy. I was on the board when this one came about, and this one pretty much follows the Mass General laws governing the remote participation policy or procedure. What did you guys think after going over it?
I agree. And obviously it's something that we recently looked at because we appointed someone to a committee who at times would be remote. So we just recently reviewed that. I don't know whether or not maybe that some of the terminology could be cleaned up under technology. To actually specify, for example, Zoom.
Yeah, but by the time the ink dries, the technology will have changed.
Exactly.
And the terminology kind of covers that. It doesn't really get, it doesn't say Zoom or Skype or anything like that.
Right. It says video technology, but they also talk about satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing.
Well,
Yeah.
we may see a day where there's a satellite uplink, like you see in the movies.
Yeah. So, I don't have the knowledge of what some of these things mean, whether they overlap, have things changed since this was done back in 2012. I have no idea. It's not the technology piece I don't know about, but the intent is there. You can participate remotely.
Yeah, that's the key for me, is that we put something in place that allows it to happen. And I don't know if it's that important of how it happens, just the fact that it can happen.
There were changes when COVID came out. That's why we're sitting here on Zoom. But under normal circumstances, you pretty much have to follow what this policy lays out. it's not designed like, I don't feel like going down to the public safety building tonight, so I'm gonna participate from home. It's not designed to cover that.
But when you look at, like, when you look at procedures for remote participation, it says, any member of a public body who wishes to participate remotely shall, as soon as reasonably prior to the meeting, notify the chair, or in the chair's absence, the person chairing the meeting of his or her desire to do so, and the reason for and facts supporting his or her request. Well, we're not doing that right now. I didn't send you a letter and say, hey, Leo, I want to show up at that Zoom meeting. So I don't know whether or not,
Well, these meetings that we're on here, the governor's executive orders have changed all of this.
correct, but do we want to maybe put a little disclaimer in there? I don't know. Hey, I'm just looking at it from, another point of view, devil's advocate.
Mhm.
I mean, like I said, I think the intent is there. It gets done what we want to get done, but if we're taking the opportunity to review it, does it say what we have to say and say it the way we should be telling the story, right?
True. Well, it does spell out the reasons for doing it. But are you more concerned with the wording under the technology section?
Well, I don't know if the wording under technology is consistent for what's current now. Is the wording and the verbiage current? I don't know about that. I don't know what video relay service is. I know what TTY is.
Isn't-
Other form of adaptive telecommunications. So these are people who require it, probably they're disabled.
The telephone, internet, or satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing. I think that's kind of a broad definition of like Skype or Zoom or.
Yeah, I don't even know what satellite enabled audio is. No clue. So,
The video conferencing, yeah, that's pretty obvious, and the internet and
correct.
telephone. I'm thinking that the satellite was probably put in there for the future.
I know. Remember, they used to have satellite phones, remember? Way back when those.
Yeah.
Like that's what I said. I don't know what some of this stuff means, so I don't know. I mean, maybe we need a tech person to look over and make sure that the words are
Well,
up to.
If you look at a company like DirecTV,
Yeah.
that you can get internet service off them, that's a satellite uplink. So it's going on all around us.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
this was taken.
Well, that's not okay. So
I'm sure this was taken from somebody else's policy. Like
I can't believe that would happen.
Yeah.
see, here's something that I run into with Zoom, okay? So it says here, when video technology is in use, the remote participant shall be clearly visible to all persons present in the meeting location. So if you're calling in with your phone and you're not visible and you just appear as a phone number and you don't have video capability, how does that work? So I've been on multiple meetings. We've been on meetings here where people have called in. We don't know who they are.
Yeah, but they're not really taking part. They're more observing.
Correct. But I've been at MPO meetings where people sitting at the MPO, I don't see them. Their videos aren't on.
They're probably not doing it right then.
That's right. So I'm just, but.
With what you just brought up though, it got me thinking, would we have to have like a if say say I was videoing in, cause from a remote participation, would there have to be a laptop sitting on the table at the live meeting so that the TV screen could pick up the face on the computer screen? I honestly don't know.
You see, I don't know what that means. I don't know what the latitude is, right? When you read it, it says you need to be visibly present. But what if you can't be?
So put it up on the big screen TV.
So, yeah, I don't know. I just, I don't know what is reasonable or not reasonable in today. But then you could FaceTime on your phone, right? And then visibly you'd be seen.
That's true.
Anyway, the intent's there, like I said. I don't think it's any like mad dash rush that we have to go hire a consultant to redo a policy. I mean,
I
maybe
don't-
we take a shot at looking to see what other people who have a remote participation policy that's, more up to date than ours was. I mean, this is almost 10 years old.
Yeah, that's true. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but you're right. We could probably try to steal somebody's more updated, at least for the wording, or change a section.
Right.
But
I mean, I have no problem. I'll try to look that up. I'll try to see, whether or not it's wildly off or anything.
Okay,
And
and you are correct. It was done because the law had changed and allowed it. So
Mhm.
this policy was created. But anytime I've been on the board, I don't remember anybody participating remotely until the COVID started and the governor did his executive orders.
I
I
think
never-
we had one where John was going to participate remotely, but then at the last minute he didn't.
Okay. I'd never even heard of Zoom until all of this stuff started. So now we go on to the next one, which is the policy regarding the selectmen's meeting agenda. Any questions or input on this particular policy?
Well, when I was chair, it was recommended that we switch this up a bit. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with what we are doing here.
Okay,
It's fine the way it is, but the recommendation I got is it's the Board of Selectmen's meeting. So when we say on here that the draft agenda is sent to the chair, what
Mhm.
from the TA's office, right? What the recommendation was, it's a Board of Selectmen's meeting and the Board of Selectmen's chair should initiate the agenda. So you ask the TA or their assistant. So the lead is the chair. So the chair so that's what I did when I was chair, because that was recommended. And now we've gone back to this policy, and this seems to be what you're following now. But just to let you know, that was a recommendation that I received, primarily because we had
I'm losing you.
left up to the TA, right? If we want to flip it and make it be originating from the chair. That would be the only thing I would say. I mean, and when you think about when this agenda policy was done, it was in 2009. You know, we weren't so web-based back then. We, you know, were still hanging agendas up on bulletin boards in town hall. We had copies that were being made, and now everything is done remotely. It's sort of like, you know, before there used to be tons of secretaries, and now there are no assistants because the managers, in our case, the Board of Selectmen is a management type position. We've taken control of what we do, right? So, yeah, that would be my only recommendation.
Okay, I missed half of what you said because you've been fuzzing out. So the recommendation,
No, I know.
the recommendation in a nutshell?
The recommendation would be that we change the policy to read that the chairman of the board is the person who takes the lead and for the development of the agenda, not the town administrator or the assistant of the town administrator. So the chair would initiate the draft copy and would go to the TA and the assistant and ask them what do they want to see at the same time that you ask the other board members. So the chair would assemble the agenda. That's what I did at the recommendation of others. Did you hear the part that I said what
You just cut out again.
they noted was that over time it was driven by the TA, not. So the thing we want to avoid, I know, the thing we want to avoid is that, can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Can
Now,
you hear me?
before we get screwed up, you talked about it having once been driven by the TA, correct?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Your mouth goes a mile a minute and
no,
the
but
words
what
hardly
we
come
need
out.
to
Maybe I should interpret for her, Leo.
Can you hear her?
I know where I know what she's trying to do. So I believe the premise of it is that instead of the agenda being driven by the town administrator and the administrative assistant, that it's driven by the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. So that, you know, you would send out to us, if we ask us if we had any items we wanted on the agenda, it would go to the TA, the administrative assistant at the same time. And then the chair would assemble the agenda, and then it would go back to folks to be posted. And one of the things that I would like to see is, and I'll use this as a perfect example because I'm not great at taking notes. So the only agenda or the only Board of Selectmen policy that I could remember was going to be on the agenda was the one about the agendas. So, so I was, you know, scrambling trying to find that policy on OneDrive. So I found it and was able to print it out and take a look at it before the meeting. But I would like to see when the agenda is assembled and there's supporting documentation, that all that documentation, you know, be sent to us as part of the agenda packet. You know, again, Rosemary talked about how we used to make copies. You'd go into the office, you'd pick up your packet of information for the selectmen's meeting, and then you would go off and do your thing. So now we just need to do that electronically. So
I agree, because it goes to that OneDrive and I hate that damn thing. I'd like to blow it up.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's, you know, when you go in there and you look around, there's a lot of old stuff hanging around in there, and it's, for me, it's not easy to find either. But I would definitely like to see when on Thursday or Friday, you know, we get the packet, it's got all the supporting documents that we need to be able to get informed, to be able to attend these meetings.
I agree with that. So Rosemary, let's see if we can hear you again.
Yeah, no, I agree with Bill. Bill got it spot on. And essentially what I'm you know, the point I was trying to make is we have to remember it's the Board of Selectmen meeting,
Yep.
not the town administrators meeting. And we have to be actively putting agenda items on it and not like sitting back on our heels and letting the TA run the show.
Well, I'd like to think that that's not what's happening right now.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. What causes it to go by to the TA driving, if they are driving the agenda?
Well,
You
they
put
get,
this on the chair.
the TA gets a lot of the information first, just because they're there on a regular work day. But then the way I've always done it, when it comes to me as the chair, that's why it goes out to you guys for your input. Do you even want on it what the TA has suggested? Or do you want to add things? And generally lately, you guys have had things to add. But part of it is a little bit laziness, but everything's coming through the TA's office, which is things that we're gonna have to address. So that's where it comes to us. But again, now we have the input, and I have a feeling when I wasn't on the board that some of that input wasn't given, or that opportunity might not have been given. You'd know better than I.
Correct. I said, but the point is with changing the agenda so that it actually is driven by the chair is so
Mhm.
that future years, when we're not here, they're doing the same thing. You're holding their feet to the fire, right?
Yeah, but were they
So-
following this policy when I was gone?
Well,
Didn't
I didn't know the policy existed because I was never given any of them.
Okay, and didn't you tell me at some point that there were times when you never saw the agenda till it came out?
Correct.
You had no input?
No one asked me what I wanted on it. No.
Those days are gone, but it could always come back depending on a future board, how they work. This board doesn't allow it. And I remember a very long time ago, Debbie telling me, and this is when I
Yeah,
was
so
on, she said that the agenda in the meeting is the board's meeting. It's not the town administrators meeting. It's not the people's meeting, because they have town meeting, which is theirs. It's strictly the board's to do the town's business. But if you want to see some word
yes.
changes, I'll be glad to put them on.
Yeah, no, so it really is just changing up the order of this. So instead of the assistant to the TA ensures the draft to center is sent to the chair,
Uh-huh.
the chair sends the draft agenda to the TA and the Board of Selectmen for review. Go to the TA and you say, hey, or to Mary, we'll say, Mary and Brian, what do you want to see on the agenda? And Mary sends it to you.
Can you, can-
Brian
I'm
sends
still,
their agenda items to you.
I'm still
Bill
having,
sends
I'm
it
still
to
having
you.
trouble hearing you. Could you write that up and send it to me?
Not tonight, though.
No,
No.
not because
No,
you
not-
just start explaining yourself, and then your connection goes haywire.
It's God saying we're done.
Yeah.
Leo, one of the important things that I want to get across is that the way this town government is set up, we can't function without the town administrator and the administrative assistant. You know, to your point, the information all flows through them. You know, the TA is the chief executive officer. That's the way it's set up. So they're obviously going to be an integral part of it. And I look at it, it's a partnership, and you go back and forth, and what are you going to do? What are you not going to do? You know, there's things that we have to do at certain times of the year that we may forget about it, whatever it is. So it's certainly not an indictment of the current administration. You know, we all know that historically we've had good town administrators, we've had okay town administrators, and we've had some really bad ones. And the really bad ones have done a lot of damage, and they set us back a long time. So I think it's good to put it, to update this policy, to put it more in the terms that Rosemary was talking about, just so that it's clear that this is the way it needs to go. And, we'll continue to work cooperatively with Brian and Mary, and it'll all be good going forward. But it memorializes it going forward as to this is the way it really should be done.
So if Rosemary could write that up and send it to us, and then we can vote on it at the next meeting?
Sounds like a plan.
I see
Sure.
her. Okay. Now we go on to the way we're gonna conduct the town administrator's review. Bill, did you get a copy of that form that Rosemary sent?
I did, yep.
Now, Rosemary, hopefully you can explain this without breaking up. How was it done with this form in the past when you used it? Uh-oh,
Well, we didn't use this particular form. Can you hear me?
kind
No.
of.
Are we already up, right? I don't know why I can't.
Yeah,
How it starts is the TA fills out their self-evaluation.
got
Did you
that
hear
part.
that? Okay. They then give it to us, and
Okay.
each of us do our individual. Then each of us do our individual evaluations of the TA.
Okay,
Then we have somebody, should be the chair, compiles all of the 3 evaluations from the select board into one master. And that's
Okay.
the master is the one that is discussed at the evaluation, at the performance review.
so it wouldn't be Rosemary said this and Leo said that and Bill said that. It would
You-
just be each section would have the comments, not necessarily who made them.
You could do that. You could do that. That's how we did. Our last performance evaluation. Can you hear me?
Half and half.
Okay, so the last time we did it all independently and delivered it independently.
Okay,
Because we did not have a system set up where there was one individual who would compile all the reviews. So it was recommended by town council that someone who is a direct report of Brian should not be the one compiling that performance review.
you mean compiling Brian's performance review?
So if we gave all 3 of our performance reviews to Mary, that was
Okay.
inappropriate.
Oh,
Because Mary
oh.
reports to Brian. And
okay,
if
well, I
Mary
agree with that.
position. So because we couldn't find anyone who could compile everything together, we just delivered them individually.
Okay, when I was involved in the past, it was actually done on a scoring basis. And everybody's would go to the chairman and the chairman would average it. Like if section 1, if it was a score of 1 to 10 and you gave an 8 and Bill gave a 6 and I gave a 5, it would be added together and divided by 3 and it would be averaged. And then the chairman at that time would go sit down with the administrator in person, go over it, and then it would in turn be sat down with at the next open meeting.
Yeah, so the evaluation that we selected, it doesn't have a score.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah, so
Lost you again.
that's a problem. It's mostly comments.
When you guys chose that one, where did it come from?
It came from another town, but I'm not sure which town it was. There was 2 or 3 that,
It was the town of, yeah, town of Upton.
Okay,
And we chose it, Leo.
okay, I just was
We
curious.
chose it. So yeah.
It was chosen, it wasn't given to you and said, hey,
Yeah,
fill
so
this
this-
out for me?
no, I think we actually voted on it.
No, we voted on it, Leo.
On that form?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so one of the reasons we choose to update the TA performance evaluation is the one that you had used in the past that involves scoring
yeah,
was not for a manager.
okay. So shall we fill this out? Brian can fill out the self-evaluation and we'll have that ready for the end of January. Because his year comes up in January, so it'll give us all time to work on it. Does that sound reasonable?
I thought that the first part of that was the self-evaluation.
Well, my by the TA, correct.
Okay, so we'll have Brian fill his out and send it to us. And then we can start working on it and have it ready for the end of January.
Does that work for you, Brian?
I just keep thinking it's been a long year.
So you'll have plenty of information to put down.
Boy, there'll be pages of stuff going on that thing.
His anniversary is January 13th, so he doesn't have to start working on it till January 14th.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, that works for me. I'm fine.
Okay, now we go on to approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes of Monday, December 7th, 2020 as written.
I'll second that because I can't hear what Rosemary's saying.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, Leo Jansen, yes?
Rosemary,
Okay,
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
okay,
Bill Johnson, yes.
all right, now we come to other business. It was brought to my attention that the open space RC needs $125 for the Bressingham Riverfront project to advertise in the newspaper per the mandate of the Concom orders of conditions. So kind of passing that on to you, Brian, because I don't think we have to vote on that, do we? Bill, would you know? Rosemary's just looking frozen again. Everybody's looking frozen
Well,
now.
I don't know, it depends on where, if you're gonna, obviously, it's gotta come out of the budget someplace. It's gonna depend on where you're gonna get it. I mean, if there's I know there's a line item for the Board of Selectmen that got some money in it, like $500 or something, so, you know, we could take a vote to take it out of a particular place to pay for it, but I don't know if we have to. We may be able to just take a vote and ask the town administrator to identify a funding source.
Lorraine, you're-
Well, my other question is, we had a $650 budget for the committee. Is that money released yet?
No,
Or is that still?
no, Rosemary said, no, it's not.
No, but
Right.
the town administrator, see, there you go. I didn't even know that there was a line item for that. So because I've never actually seen the budget. So, which is another story. That's not a shot.
So
It's just-
what I don't understand, is this an open space or a Concom? Why wouldn't Concom pay for this?
Probably orders of
Well, it wouldn't
condition.
be a Concom project. They're not administering it or facilitating it. We just have to apply because it's in riverfront jurisdictional wetlands. We have to go to them for the permit.
Well, I don't really know much about this. I don't know what you're talking about, so.
Well, we had talked about, remember the woman Debbie Moylan from Sanctuary approached
you-
us? She wa-
Area.
Yes. Yeah, well, we don't want to call it the pool area anymore because it's never going to be a pool. So, and into Riverfront Park, with my benches, and we would sort of clean it up a little bit and take out all the overgrowth
Yeah,
so that
so
people could just
I thought you were talking
sit
about the
there.
Breast Cancer Center, and I'm like, what riverfront? Anyway, whatever.
But when the dam lets go, that's all gonna be waterfront property down there.
There you go. I was just totally confused. I'm like, what riverfront's at the Breast Cancer Center? Anyway,
I guess the question goes to you, Brian. Are there funds available?
If it's a project you want to support and move forward, I was in some of the meetings regarding that. It's a nice project. They have a lot of people there that want to help out and make that area look definitely more presentable. I can find the funding source for that.
For $125.
As far as I know, that's what it is. I need to double check with Marshall again. It's about 125 just to advertise it. Now we will have to pay, we'll have to pay state wetland fees. We cannot waive those. And I think the municipality can waive their, but I'm not sure that Marshall will. And then there's the bylaw fees, which he did say he would waive. So when I spoke to Marshall, he said it would cost about $125. I don't know that he was including the advertising fee. So maybe, and this would be worst case scenario, I would say it would be $250, but I wouldn't expect it to actually get that high. I just want to throw out the highest possible number.
So
And
could I get a motion to authorize the town administrator to cover the associated fees with the Breaston Riverfront project?
I'd make that motion with the understanding that the money would come out of the open spaces budget. Seeing they have
No,
money there.
I haven't asked the committee yet, so I can't do that unilaterally. It's just an idea that I had tonight. So I would want to bring it back to them in January when we meet again to have them all vote to approve, for that approval.
because how much do they have in that budget, Brian? Like $12.50, I think, right?
I believe that's what it is. I don't have it in front of me.
So
So
what-
they,
Bought for $750, but
No, you
whatever.
got
it doesn't matter.
Mr. Chairman, do you need me to add on to that a motion pending a vote of approval by open space?
works for me. That makes sense.
Great.
I just need a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Cleo Chanson's yes.
Rosemary Meisner, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes.
And
you.
still under other business, letters went out for the people to get their information in for the website committee, and also a reminder for the ethics test that had to be taken online.
Leah, was it the website committee or the bylaw committee?
It was get your
Oh,
Get
yeah,
your-
yeah, got it.
get your information in.
Yeah, I remember it now. I'm the one that talked about it.
That's
Oh,
right.
Three things.
So those letters went out, at least some of them did.
So the bylaw review committee, we still have outstanding. One of them is outstanding. Tomorrow's the deadline.
I've gotten emails from two people. Planning and conservation have submitted their delegate names. Have either of you gotten anybody else's input?
No, I'm waiting to hear on zoning. I haven't heard anything.
Okay,
What about Board of Health?
I've heard nothing from them.
Yeah, so those guys need to get back to you. So Board of Health and zoning. Board of Health is Leo and zoning is Bill.
Mary, question for you. Do you have a phone number for Dave Perry?
I believe downstairs does in the land use, so I can certainly get that for you.
Yeah, if you could do that, that'd be helpful because I've sent them a couple of emails now. I've heard nothing back, so they haven't bounced back, so I'm assuming he's getting them, but I will reach out to him if you get me that number.
Will do.
Thank you.
All right, now we go to you, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, the next Board of Selectmen's meeting will be Monday, January 4th, 2021. That's the first time I've said that, at 6:30 p.m. And that will be a Zoom meeting. And the Board of Selectmen would like to wish everyone happy holidays. Stay safe, wear your masks, and social distance.
And I need one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Heard that one. All in favor? Leo Jansen's yes.
Rosemary Meister, yes.
Bill Johnson, yes.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.